Welcome to the What's Working podcast, the podcast where we ask, what's working? Hey, welcome to the What's Working podcast. I am Jimmy Nash, and I'm thrilled to have in the studio today Alina Benun, CEO of V1sion, a creator-focused agency. Alina, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So let's talk about, your agency, you say it's an agency for creators by creators. Tell me a little bit about that and what led to you starting this.
So we're technically a management company. The only differentiator between agency and management company is that as managers, we manage the full scope of not only brand campaigns, but also helping our creators to grow and then helping to manage their schedules when it comes to content and anything that include social, so brand trips as well, or events that they're going to around social with brands.
Okay. Yes. So I see that differentiation, and it's interesting. I think you're the first, if you say management company versus agency that I've spoken to on the podcast, because you talk about there being a gap in the market when it comes to influencer representation and mentoring, because it's just kind of, people just say, well, just start posting content, and without a plan, that's not necessarily, some people do take off, so you never know, they get that one viral video, but so what is that gap in the market? How do you help fill that?
So actually, before I answer that, to go off of what you were just saying, I was that creator that had blown up randomly after one video went pretty viral, and then I had a couple viral videos kind of continue over and over again. And I built my initial TikTok platform from honestly a lot of randomness, and I learned a lot along the way, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so I wanted to create a management company where I could use all of the information that I'd learned to help people not make those mistakes and also feel more supported by their managers. So when I was a creator, I was managed by a management company and they didn't do anything wrong. I just felt like they could have been more supportive of helping with strategy and thinking of long-term plans for me instead of just negotiating the deals. So that's the kind of company that I wanted to create. So our managers are well-versed in content creation in addition to negotiating and managing the campaign cycle. So I've helped some creators go from 50K to 500K, 70K to 700K, and so on. And it's definitely a little bit of luck and the right timing with the algorithm, but also understanding people and what works. And I am a consumer, so I think that makes me the best at strategy because I am the person that most brands are catering to.
Well, that's wonderful. That's those are some impressive stats. I mean, it's not easy. People, I'll see people that post and post and post and post day in, day out, and they're still at just like 3,000 followers, 4,000 followers. So it's no easy feat to take that on to help, not just for yourself, but to help other people plan that out. So how long ago did you start this V1sion?
In 2022. So it's been 3.5 years since I started the business.
So in that time, we always, no matter what on the podcast, we end up talking about AI because it's just so pervasive in everything. Has that changed anything? Has that changed the algorithm for you? Have that changed? I mean, there's a lot of AI content out there now. How has it changed anything in what you do?
I mean, I don't think AI creators are going to be able to replicate the feeling that you get from connecting to real human being creators. They can mimic things, but the soul of a person is the reason why, in my opinion, creators can sustainably do well. I think when the algorithm first started, there was a lot of creators that kind of just blew up very randomly. So it's very interesting because you have so many different kinds of creators. And in my opinion, the ones that have grown in the last 3 years are the ones that have built true communities of people and are going to be transcending just beyond the platform.
Right. And I think that's very interesting because I think people I see people advertising all the time, like it will make you an AI
Hmm.
avatar, and you can just
Hmm.
do and say whatever you want and grow your following. And I think
Yeah.
seems like it seems kind of short-sighted to think
Yeah.
that, because then everybody's gonna there will be no barrier to entry for that level of just
Right.
so.
Yeah. I mean, I I don't think AI creators are going to replace real human
Mhm,
creators. I think that some can have some success with it because they understand patterns and
mhm,
that can, help to boost you on the algorithm. But at least what I've seen, even from people following, once they find out people are AI, they tend to unfollow or go away from that. Even with, like, I have one creator who's also an artist, and there's a lot of discourse within AI artists, and the best way to connect with your audience in artistry is through touring. And of course, AI can't
right.
tour. So I think that there's a lot of real human things that AI won't be able to replicate. But I do think that if you're worried about AI taking your spot, then maybe that spot is not really what you want to do. Because the people that I've seen that they want to be creators and they love creating, they're not really worried about AI because they're so focused on doing what they love and
Mhm,
letting that lead the way. But I think with the discourse around creators making so much money and this being something where you can make a lot of money, everyone wants to be a creator. And
mhm,
personally, I don't think everyone is meant to be a creator in the same way. I think all people are meant to be creatives, but some people are meant to be more forward facing and others aren't. And so not everyone is going to be successful in this industry because it's not what everyone is in alignment to do.
mhm. I had heard somewhere, I forget what, it was a crazy high percentage. They had interviewed kids in elementary school what they wanted to be when they grew up, and it was like
Mhm.
40 or 50% said influencers.
Yeah,
And I'm
that's
like,
crazy.
and just first of all, our economy couldn't function on 50%. Like,
No.
you got to have somebody that has something interesting about them, something that you
Yeah.
want, that people would want to see, whether that's in fashion or music or art in any kind.
Well, I think also working with some of the top creators, there's a threshold to how many years you can be just being a creator and doing brand deals and finding fulfillment within that. I think with a lot of the like longer term YouTube creators, you've seen them pivot into creating businesses and doing
Right.
something that really creates long term fulfillment because transparently, just becoming a creator and then monetizing that for most people is not going to scratch that itch of fulfillment.
Right. So isn't kind of like you find that first thing that works, that
Yeah.
gets you an audience, and then you build upon that, I would imagine.
Exactly. I look at social media more as a tool to create, but I don't think social media is an end all be all.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just that a great way to get attention, ways that we did not
Mhm.
have, you know, in previous generations that we now
Yeah.
have, that you don't have to get a write up in a newspaper to get people's attention or be
Mhm.
on the local news. So, yeah, it can definitely be a springboard, of course. Um,
Yeah.
I'm curious about, let's talk about the minutia of the algorithm, because I remember when social media first started, and it seemed like you could just post consistently, put the right hashtags, and you could probably get a following. How has
Yeah.
that changed now, just in the last
Yeah.
5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. I would say in 2020, when I grew my following, that's kind of how it was, especially on TikTok. If you honestly, you could kind of do anything and blow up at that point in time. Everyone was blowing up if you were
Mhm.
just showing up consistently on the internet. And then I think 21 to 2022 was kind of a shift to, well, what are you really doing and how are you showing up as a personality online? But I think there was a lot of growth in especially 2022. I saw, and into 2023, I saw a lot of our creators have a lot of growth. And I would say in the last year, year and a half, growth has been a lot slower for most creators where they're trying to not go viral, but really build sustainable communities.
Mhm.
And in fact, when I work with creators, I tell them, I'm not looking for you to go viral. I'm looking for you to slowly build community that connects with you and understands what you're trying to achieve by creating your platform. And we're very strategic about the people that we work with, because if if you just want to become an influencer but you don't know why, other than just to generate money,
Hmm.
that's totally fine, but that's not the creators that we work with, because we want to build long-lasting brands. We look at each creator as a brand, and that's what I'm passionate about building, is creatives and helping them to monetize and strategically think further than just how can I make money from brand deals.
Right. Of course. Yeah, I think it's funny. It's interesting that echoes in so many fields. I hear Gary Vee talk about that. Like, if you're only doing something for the money,
Yeah,
you're going to burn out.
yeah,
You're going to lose interest in that. There's got to be something, that alignment of something you're interested in, something other people are interested in, something that could generate income.
exactly.
So, what would you say? I mean, we've probably already spoken of a couple things, but what would be the biggest mistake that influencers make right now? Do you think that you see people and you're like, "Ah, gosh, if they just did
Yeah.
this a little different?"
I would say posting to become an influencer. If you're just trying to post to make money, but you don't have a clear why on what your audience is going to be gaining from you posting, then I would say let's go back to the drawing board and get clear on what is your why and what value are you bringing to your audience before you start posting.
Cool. Excellent. I always like to talk about, is it San Diego?
So I started the company in San Diego,
Okay.
and then I moved to Miami, and
Oh,
now
okay.
I currently live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. So you've run the gamut across. All right.
Yeah, I have a 1.5-year-old, and my husband's
Oh,
work is
okay.
here, so my life changed kind of quickly, and we needed to be around family.
But given what you do, how you've set up your company, has that influenced you in any way wherever you've been? San Diego, Miami,
Yeah,
Milwaukee.
it's definitely Wisconsin is not a long-term place that will be, because I'm traveling pretty much twice a month, if not more.
Hmm.
Because I have to be in LA or New York for different
Right.
shoots or events, or yeah, lots of different things. So it's not really manageable to be in the Midwest long term, unless you are a creator. But even then, I would say going closer to a bigger city is probably going to benefit you by networking with brands and
Hmm.
creating community within those spaces, because the people behind the brands are the ones deciding ultimately who gets to be in
Right.
campaigns and partnerships. So that is my biggest tip, is to genuinely just network and make connections and show up authentically as yourself. Don't try to be anyone else other than you, because it's only going to work when you are showing up as you.
Hmm. And I think that's interesting. My wife and I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, but we came down from Manhattan. We still do a lot of work in Manhattan. We travel,
Yeah.
and we're very lucky to be flexible. And my hat is off to anyone who has a 1.5-year-old and running your own company, because I know how the
Yeah.
struggles with running your own company without a child. So I tip my
Yeah,
hat to
it's
you on that.
thanks. It's definitely a lot of work, but incredibly rewarding. And hopefully, when she's older and can understand, she'll look back and be like, wow, my mom was still doing a lot, even though I was so little.
Hmm. I think, yeah, I think so. I think kids appreciate that. I know my
Yeah.
parent. I grew up on the road a lot. My parents were musicians, and
Oh, that's awesome.
they say, oh, maybe we should have been this career or this career. I'm like, no, it was great. We picked
Yeah.
different. It was,
Yeah,
it was different from the norm.
absolutely.
So I always like to ask, if there were one, I don't like to say problem, but just issue in your industry that if you could just snap your fingers and solve tomorrow and never have to deal with, what would that be in social media, in managing creators?
Um, I think there would be two. The whole sequence of like going live with campaigns and the intricacies within campaigns, I would probably just want to, if there is a way that brands could just go live with the campaigns instead of the influencers having to manage that, that would be
Hmm.
awesome. And then
Hmm. Yeah.
also, I would say the algorithm, and just every creator at some point is like, what is going on with my algorithm? I'm shadow banned. Something's wrong. And from our knowledge, there's no such thing as shadow banning. I know that it feels like gaslighting to creators to hear that, but
Mm.
I think there's just an ebb and flow of when your content's going to do well and when it's not. And it's nothing that you're necessarily doing or not doing as long as you're continuing the same kind of content that you're creating.
Mhm.
So I would say if there was a so because we do have, support from TikTok directly, but they don't give you any tips on if anything's going on with the algorithm.
Right. I've heard that a lot. Shadow ban. I see that like that's one of the
Yeah.
most searched things. Like, am I shadow
Yeah.
banned? How do you know?
Right.
And like, you're not. But
Yeah.
it can be tough because you spend a lot of time creating content. Sometimes you post something and it gets like 20 likes, and then sometimes
Yeah.
it takes 2,000 likes. And there's not always a rhyme or reason. And I think
Yeah.
that's a very frustrating part about anything with social media.
Yeah. Typically, whenever you start to feel like you get a handle on the algorithm and it's starting to work with you, then the flow kind of stops and then you feel confused. But that's just kind of how the ebb and flow is, no matter what stage you're at. I see it with my largest creators with, over 10 million followers or my
Hmm.
creators with 50,000 followers.
Right. Well, it's good to know that it's everyone. It's
Yeah,
that issue has been democratized among all people,
it
and big
is.
and small. So, do you see anything coming up for the future in the next 2, 3? Everything runs things change so quickly now. So I don't
Hmm.
even like to ask for a vision for 5 or 10 years, but 2 or
Yeah.
3 years. Do you see anything, any new trends growing, anywhere where social media is going that people need to be prepared for?
I think the creators that are successful are going to continue to be successful. And I think because there's going to continue to be more and more creators, you just have to be able to stand out from the crowd with what you're doing because just posting about the things that you like is not going to do it anymore. So, really making sure to be super clear on showing up authentically as yourself is going to help you to stay. But I see brands eventually creating more of like ambassadorships, kind of like how the fashion houses do with
Hmm.
talent.
Right.
And I think there's going to be a lot more of like long-term opportunities with brands versus one-off paid campaigns.
Okay, good to know. Good to I like to get that feel because
Yeah.
you're the first person I've talked to that was like highly focused on social media. Everybody knows social media.
Yeah.
Everybody that's a lot of the people I've talked to are very based in, websites, SEO, the
Hmm.
Google ads, those kind of things. So it's interesting to get everybody's viewpoint, which is what podcast is all
Yeah.
about. Um, as far as the different platforms go, is there one that you see as more beneficial to creators, or is it just depending where they build their network? I know I hear things about the monetization on YouTube versus TikTok versus anywhere else. Is there one that's more beneficial you see across the board?
Well, you'll definitely make more money monetizing on YouTube than you will on TikTok.
Right.
Views are not going to pay you very much. So if you're just trying to create, I think if you're trying to just be a creative, YouTube is probably your best bet. It's harder to grow organically just from YouTube, but that's why people typically go to TikTok to grow organically. However, Instagram has, or yeah, Meta has really been increasing their ability for smaller creators to gain visibility, especially through reels and carousels with text over screen. So the more people engage and stay on your content, the longer it is, the more they'll be pushed to the For You page or the Explore page. So yeah, I would say they, I like to think of the platforms as kind of an onion. I would say YouTube is like that core of the onion where you're showing your most authentic version of yourself. And
Mm.
then you have one more layer over that, which would be TikTok, where you show a little bit more of yourself, but you're not fully showing as much as YouTube. And then Instagram is a little bit more surface level. But I do think that you can still connect to an audience
Mhm.
more than you probably could 2 years ago on Instagram.
Right. I like that. Social media onion. We'll
Yeah.
go with that for the segment. Uh, so before we wrap up, I always like to ask if if there's somebody just starting out, whether they're starting their own agency or looking to manage creatives or be the creative themselves, what would be your top piece of advice for them getting started from scratch, whatever it might be?
Yeah, just get really clear on what is your why. So if you want to become a talent manager, why? Are you just trying to be around talent, or do you actually just want to help people build their dream lives? Because you will build yours in the process, but if you are unhappy with your life, it's going to only magnify the unhappiness with your life, because creators make a lot of money and you're only going to make a small percentage of that in the beginning. So when I started my business, I didn't set out to start a business. I had already been on the creator side and I just wanted to help people. And I loved the creativity of building. When you're not focused on the money is when the money comes. And that's exactly what
Of course.
happened for me. It's way easier said than done. But on the creator side, I would say same thing. Focus on figuring out what is your why and why are you sharing and what do you want to share, and try to watch your content from the view of a third party. So I would edit it and then come back to it later with fresh eyes and see, is this something that I myself want to watch all the way through, or is it not? Because if you don't want to watch it all the way through, then
Mhm.
no one else is going to want to.
That's so true. I agree with so much of what you said. Actually, well, all of it, but it's something specifically with me. Alina, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you.
Alina Benun, CEO of V1sion Ventures. Go check her out. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will catch you next time.